Here I am. It's good to see everybody. Man, I'm just evaluating the room, see if I like anybody today. It's going good so far. We'll see. We'll give you about 20 minutes. We'll adjust there. Last second pitch hinting. And so here we go. Extremely excited about Easter Sunday. And I say that with great conviction. I'll be honest with you, Easter Sunday has never been, it's an important service, but it's never really been that service for us. You know, you kind of have that service. And if we have that service, it would probably be later in the year, towards the Christmas time. But I do feel like that the Lord is desiring to do something on Easter Sunday. And so I encourage you, as a part of the core of TCT, I encourage you, let's prepare ourselves to be a sanctuary. Prior to the arrival, why don't we position ourselves this week? The United Pentecostal Church, as you've seen on our info app, is doing a 24-hour prayer and fasting. I consider each one of you, and I realize ministry can be different, but I consider you a part of the vital aspect of the ministry of TCT. And so if you're wondering what that is about, go back to the first video and you'll kind of catch a sense of what the United Pentecostal Church is doing. So I didn't arrive at the church early, but I did wake up as early as I always wake up. Due to my wife being in Jinx today, I had Jude. So I wasn't going to leave and then go back and then come back. So I just stayed early at the house. But in doing so, I've tried to keep myself in the flow of what our organization's doing. And I feel that this morning, the endeavor to push forward toward what God really wants in terms of deliverance. And so it's step by step. So watch the videos if you haven't already. They're not long. You know, most of them are below 10 minutes. And so watch those and you'll get a sense of exactly what's going on. So we're praying for Jinx. Pastor Krebs is not feeling well. I believe him and Sister Crystal are underneath the weather, probable of the flu type. So he asked late yesterday if my wife, who was already planning on being there, if she would go ahead and speak today. So be in prayer for her. Palm Sunday today. I've been hurting all week. It's fantastic. I see the city. That's what I've been saying all week long. But in all joking aside, there hasn't been a time in which I've preached on a subject like that I haven't left a day or two later in some kind of excruciating pain. So I've been there all week long. So I'm not in my right state of being. There you have it. So if you're like, man, he's not acting right. Brother Short, I can't fathom. I mean, I just honestly, I don't know how you function. So, and it just brings my respect at a higher level for who you are and how faithful you are. And those of you that deal with chronic pain, nerve pain, my hat's off to you. And, you know, I'm blown away at your faithfulness. So thank you for being faithful to the house of God. So last second kind of shift. And I want to do a reminder today. I feel like it's good for us to be together and be reminded. I realize, and I just told Alicia this prior to service starting, that we have a tendency, especially on Sunday mornings, we have a tendency of being over-informationalized, okay? We push a lot of information out to you. So I'm asking you, just receive what you need to receive. Push everything else to the outskirts, because I don't want you to miss the message today. And last week I left, there was a little frustration in my spirit. Just not with you, just with the total concept of the service. You have these ideas in your mind. Rick, you've been there. We have these ideas in our mind, and when it doesn't play out like that, you're assessing exactly what could have taken place. Was it the response of the people? Did we not prepare enough? Did I do something that I shouldn't have done? You realize you preach a 45-minute message. Most of you, if not all of you, have been here prior to 9 o'clock, and we've engaged in prayer for 30 minutes. You're teaching, you're receiving, you're worshiping, and most likely I've rocked you into a state, through 45 minutes worth of a message. So I need to be more diligent and make sure I hit the point as quickly as possible. And but at the same time, there are, I think, still efforts on our part to say no matter what. And I want that mentality to be in the church. Do you remember the days in which it was the altar at any cost? Do you remember those days? Like, it wasn't no matter what. It wasn't 10, 15 years ago, like when a message was preached, you just went to the altar. It's like, I got nothing out of that message. But you were in the altar pushing. It's just the way it was. And I can't, in all honesty, I don't think I can recall one message. I've been trying to recall a single message in terms of like the title of one message of a pastor that I served at here in Oklahoma for a long time, and I can't recall a single one. And so blame that on the age, blame that on the circumstance. Regardless, I can't recall. I can recall content, but I couldn't tell you like, yep, this is, if I said, what did I preach on 2 weeks ago? You would say, don't look. What did I preach on 2 weeks ago? What was the title? 2 weeks ago. Aha, we had one. I was hoping nobody would get one, but Sister Short had to be better than everybody else. But truth be told, it's very difficult because of how congested life is and how heavy our schedules are and the demands of life are, that we are able to recall even 2 weeks ago. Last week would probably be more simple. If I said, what did I speak on last week? You would say, see the city. But 2 weeks, they say it is imperative for any leader that's pushing vision out, any leader of any type, whether you are leading an organization, whether you are leading a department, whether you are leading a ministry, whether you are leading a church, they say that it is imperative every 4 weeks. So if you're a leader of any kind, if you're a manager on your job, if you're a leader on your job, every 4 weeks, you have to revisit the vision every 4 weeks. Because vision is filtered away over a span of 4 weeks. That is the normal time span of how long vision can be concreted in a person in this day and hour. So, hence the fact that we are doing our best today to remind who we are. And I thought, if I'm speaking on a Sunday morning, I'm going to deviate from the Sunday school material. In fact, I don't even have the Sunday school material, by the way. But I'm going to deviate from that, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to remind the church today of who we are. Is that okay? Great, I knew it was. Let me see if I can get on the same page here. No, what in the world? Okay, is that okay? So let me ask you a question here, and I want you to answer that. I want you to answer it openly. Okay, this is a class. We're in the sanctuary, but this is a multi-purpose building. How can the voice of the church today be heard above the racket of the culture today? So in what way can we position ourselves in which our voice, okay, the voice of the church, not the voice of Barron Longstreth, not increasing Ammon's, give me a little bit more monitor, not that. And that was facetious, by the way. But how can the voice of our church, what is the voice of our church? Maybe we should start right there. What is the voice of the church? Anybody? What is the voice? I should have brought a chair. I remember how brutal these things are. I don't know why I do myself like this. Chris, what is the voice of the church?
I think part of our voice is how we serve.
How we serve. That's great. I love that. Brother Virgil, what is the voice of our church? You're sitting there leaning in. If I would say, what is a part of our voice? What is an expression of who we are? Make people feel welcome. Bridget, what is the voice of our church? And then love. Love is a part of the voice of our church. Brother Frazier. Our personal testimony. It's fantastic. Amber. I'm sorry? Prayer is the voice of our church. Okay? All of these things are absolutely proper. They're all right. The voice of our church is the expression of our vision. It's the expression of our culture. It's who we are. It's how we do what we do. And all of those things were a part of the voice. So now you see we can still fill in if I asked each and every one of you, we would get redundant a couple times, but the majority of that we would probably find different expressions of who we are. That's the voice of the church today. This is how we do what we do. Love, prayer, making people feel welcome, and down the line, okay? That's the voice of the church, okay? We'll call it our personality. Is that all right? So that's our personality. How can we, give me an example, how can our voice, now you've had some examples, rise above the racket of the culture today? How can we do that? Say it louder. Being there for people. So being involved, for example, using love to be there for somebody. Using prayer, thank you, to be there for somebody. Using our personal testimony to be there for somebody. I'm just looking around. What did you say, Chris? Serving somebody. So we can do that. Okay? So, somebody else, but short.
Positive communication.
Positive, give me an example of that. That's right. That's awesome. Using the platform that we have online. So, in order to be positive. So, whatever that would look like. Somebody's having a negative result of a day, I don't understand it. If you post on Facebook, I'm going to be your parent. If you post negative on Facebook, you probably need to be spanked. Like there should be absolutely no reason. Do you know what social media is? If you did, you would not post anything negative on Facebook. Nobody cares about that. They do not care. I promise you, they don't care. Am I wrong? They don't care. Okay. Now, you don't look like a victim. It might be the medication, but you look ignorant. I don't know how, this is not even meant to be funny. I'm trying to help somebody. I'm trying to help you today. You really look ignorant. You look like you're seeking attention, and you're getting it, but it's not helping any. It's probably, the majority of the time that we post negative, it's probably derogatory, or it has an aim. You're aiming at somebody. And the biblical expression of how you deal with something is not to get on Facebook and post about it, or Instagram, or TikTok, or Truth Social, or Social Truth, or Truth, what is that? What's Trump's thing? He's going to make $4 billion off of it. We should know what it is. What is it? Truth Social? We need to be very mindful. That's not the subject content today, but we need to be very mindful. I promise you, employers, if you want to move up, They are looking on your social media. So if you're going to put it on social media, put it on a story. Let it fall off in 24 hours. Don't post it. The biblical expression of how to deal with is found in the pure joy of being able to reconcile a relationship. And that's to go to the person and say, listen, you really hurt me. You hurt me. That's biblical. This is not the content, but we just talked about it because Brother Short had to bring it up. And we have to deal with it. We have to deal. Confrontation is extremely healthy. It's not negative. I don't know why we deal with confrontation. We don't mind confronting it in a passive-aggressive way, but we have to confront that. We have to get with somebody and say, listen, I'm going to be biblical, and I'm going to try to reconcile the relationship, not ruin it. You know what I mean? Even further. So yeah, we can post positive things, on Facebook. So reputations, I tell you, never mind. Because I won't be able to dig myself out of that. And I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes talking about something that is not going to remind us. Be careful. How about that? Be careful with social media. Because you're the one that looks foolish, not them. You look foolish. You might not think, but you look foolish. And if you want to gain traction and be taken serious, be careful. Is that all right? Is that all right for me to say? I don't take you serious. If I see it, I don't take you serious. I wonder what pastor thinks about that. There it is. I do not take you serious. Because these are the expressions that I take serious. This is the way that I take things serious. Does that make sense? I just don't take it serious. You might not care, and that's fine, but nobody else does either, okay? So there you have it. So how can our voice rise above the racket? We have to aim for that. The racket is what I was just talking about. The racket is going online. The racket is culture influencing. And somewhere along the line, if we're going to portray that we have truth, that we're an apostolic church, that we're trying to be there for our community, if we're going to try to portray that, hey, you matter, the will of God at any cost, we're going to have to allow our voice to be heard above that. We're going to have to, what I'm saying is we are going to have to be intentional. Everybody say, I'm going to have to be intentional. Because it doesn't happen by accident, okay? It doesn't happen by accident. There are three ways in which culture is established. One is through passivity, and that's not the way that the church today has ever operated. We're not going to operate like that. What does that mean? That means culture is established just because it's established. I have been to churches where there is not an intentional development of its culture. Okay? It's not intentional all the way through, and so it just starts forming organically. And sometimes you're wondering, what in the world? Where am I at? Like, what is going on? Like, it doesn't seem like, nothing is matching. And it's because they've just allowed culture to be developed. And they're not taking an intentional approach about it. You don't think this is vital, but I promise you when we get to where we're going, this is very vital. The second way that culture is established is through what we would call this very intentional placement. It's very intentional. We're moving, we're doing it. We're going to be responsible for it. So it's not just passive, Garrison, I'm going to be responsible for culture. And there's nothing wrong with that for an organization to say, I am not going to be passive, I'm going to be intentional about it, and I'm going to make a move. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're dealing with that in a church setting, that is a dangerous and oftentimes very hindering aspect of culture establishment. And here's the reason. You ready? Because if we just do it from our own ability, then it's as good as we can do it. Does that make sense? Like, we can do it, but only to the point of all of us working together. And a lot of times, the Lord is not in. Okay, we're going to build ourselves a tower. We're going to build ourselves a tower. Don't give me the business that was positive. There was nothing positive about that. It was absolutely against the word of the Lord. I want you to go out and I want you to be fruitful and I want you to multiply. and they came in and said, we're going to build ourselves a tower, and there was a name that was going to be established for themselves, and that was anti what God wanted, and so God said, fine. I'm not going to allow this to happen. And what they've set out to do, they're going to establish their own vision. They had a culture and they established that. And he said, they're going to make it. They're going to do exactly what they have in mind. But that's not what I have in mind. So the third culture establishment is not just this way of me being able to do it on my own. It's me partnering with him. And the third is divine partnership, and that's where we want to get. It's not just my personal investment, but it's us working together. It's him being the mind and me being the hands and feet. I need to let him be him. I need to let him be him and let him develop it. And we can be the hands and feet of it. But he's the mastermind of it all. And we get behind him and we do the work. We are literally the hands and feet. Somebody said a personal testimony. We are the hands and feet. We're the expression of the mind and the will and the heart of God. That's what we are. So we need to allow God to be the culture creator. That's the unoriginal church. If you haven't watched that series, shame on you. I'm just being silly. That didn't go over very well. That's the medication talking. But that's the unoriginal church, is a church that is trying to make itself original. That's a heartbeat of every church out there. We want to be original. We don't want to be a carbon copy. And there's nothing wrong with a mindset. The unoriginal church says, you know what, to be original, I have to go back to an unoriginal position, and that is allowing God to be the mastermind, the architect, the designer of it. That's the first episode, is the designer. He is the designer. He's the chief cornerstone. And we're built, every stone should be built around him. And I promise you, I've been a part of making decisions that I realized were human decisions being made, because the outcome of that was just not. It was good, it might have even been great, but a lot of times it didn't connect with the overarching will of God, the purpose of God. And you're standing there saying, all of this effort, all of this time, all of these endeavors, it didn't hurt the church, it just did not. It's not the will of God. So we need to get to a position where we're willing to say, okay, God, it's your will, not mine. So what do you want? Because I promise you, his will sometimes looks like crucifixion. That's not Peter's will, but that was his will. You see what I'm saying? So we need to let God be God and every other man what he is at best. Okay, so Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish, but happy is he that keepeth the law, but he that keepeth the law is happy. And so the vision here is revelation. It's divine revelation. It doesn't just mean good vision that was conjured up by us all getting together and manufacturing something. Where there is no vision, that is divine revelation. So we need divine revelation. Even today, we need divine revelation. We can't exist without divine revelation. People perish without divine revelation. This is not a leadership verse. We take it and apply it to that. It's not a leadership verse. It's a verse for the church. Where there is no vision, where there is no divine revelation, people perish. This is a gospel verse. Where there is no divine revelation. Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. That's divine revelation. Peter, you got a divine revelation. People perish without divine revelation. Does that make sense? So this verse it cross-pollinates across the board. It's not just about, well, we need a good leadership verse. Well, let's go to Proverbs 29:18. No, without vision, we need vision. Vision. We need divine revelation. Now let me put it in practical terms. If vision is the steak, then culture is the plate that it's served on. I love this. This is Phil Cook. He wrote a fantastic book called Branding Faith, then rewrote that and called the book Unique. Either one of those would be worth your time to read, okay, if that's your sort of thing. So, but vision is the steak, culture is the plate that it's served on. We don't eat culture. We eat the vision. We don't need culture. We are culture. It's who we are. Culture is who we are. And a byproduct of who we are is what we do. But the vision drives us. The vision nourishes us. But without vision or without culture, vision is served on an empty plate. So you can have all the vision in the world if there's no receptivity to that vision. If I say, we're going to move and this is how we're going to do it, and you're not ready to receive that, you get it? So we can be vision driven, and I love that. I love vision driven, but without culture, vision is not received. Vision is not embraced. Vision doesn't have a place to operate properly. So if you think, what's all this culture business, doesn't make a difference, it absolutely makes a difference. We've got to have the right culture. And I can go and say, well, you're talking about church principles here. Let me talk about your family. You could set and establish rules for your family, okay? Listen, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. That's vision. But if you don't create an atmosphere and parameters, I can't tell you how many times I've counseled people, well, I raise my kids in church. And then we get down to the nitty gritty and we start saying, you were faithful to the house of God. What was the home life like? How did that work? How did you do? How did this? And it's not to say I told you so. It's simply to say, well, let's look at the culture of your home. And what we realize oftentimes is the culture of the home, okay, does not match or support the vision. Here's my vision for our house. We're going to be, and the culture does not support that. So we need proper culture in our homes, in your marriage. We can go on and on and on. We think of culture and we think, I'm not a business person. I work in a factory or, whatever. But culture goes beyond that. Vision goes beyond that. I love vision. We're vision-driven people. We don't mind speaking it. We'll prophesy, but will we live and create the parameters of those things that we feel God is wanting us to project? I've lost you. I lost you. Culture is Tuesday morning prayer. That's culture. Culture is, I'm going to give no matter what. That's culture. Vision is, God said, so here's what we're going to do. Culture is saying, here's how we're building the framework, being led by God to do it in order to substantiate my belief in the vision. Does that make sense? So tell me you believe the vision by showing me that you have the proper culture in operation in your church, in your home, in your personal life. Rick Warren, it wasn't me, it was Rick Warren, so blame him. But he said, you only believe that which you do. So tell me you believe something. You show me your faith without your works. I'll show you my faith by my works. So I believe in holiness. Well, then you show me. Show me what holiness is. I believe that Bible studies is an effective way. Well, then show me by giving a Bible study. I believe in praise and worship. Then show me that praise and worship. You see what I'm saying? Too early? Wednesday night kind of thing? Culture is more important than vision. This is Phil Cook, whether you believe it or not. I think it's a statement worth looking at. Some leaders have great vision, but have created a toxic culture where that vision will never happen. Both are essential. Without divine revelation, people perish. So whether I believe that culture is more important than vision is irrelevant. Both are vital. I think this expression helps us understand that without culture, no matter how much vision you have, don't tell me what your vision is. Show me what God is doing to help you build the culture of it. And I'm going to speak to our leaders. Like, don't tell me what your vision is. Tell me what your Tuesday morning stuff looks like. Then I'll start believing it. We all have vision. We're an organization that is flooded with vision. What we need to be is an organization that is flooded with the parameters of what is built in order to substantiate that. We can all fire off. What I feel like is sustainable is some structure that is built there. Does that make sense? Like, I believe that God can heal. Well, then what am I doing? What structures am I building in order to facilitate the healing to take place? That's kind of what I'm talking about here today. We need to be reminded of how important the culture of not only the church today. Well, you're the culture designer. No, we're all a part of the culture. I can't be at the front door. I can't be in the AVL. I can't lead worship. I used to. It's just outgrown me. It's outcomplicated my simple mind. I can't do that. I can't be on the drums and on the security patrol at the same time. You wouldn't want me on the drums. Chris says no. He played with me before at the North Campus, and he made fun of me. And it's still a little wounded in my spirit. Little wounded. I had the vision. The vision is the why, the mission is the how, the values are the what, and the culture is the who. It's who we are. That's who we are. This is who we are. Why? I've heard this. Why do you do? Because it's who we are. It's our culture. We can't deviate that. I've lost people. We've lost people here at the church today because we weren't willing to violate our culture. This is who we are. And you are not going to change who we are. Now, can you affect us and make us better? Absolutely. We hope that's the case. But we're not going to violate who we are to accommodate who you are. You change, because this is what God, and that's the thing. If it's God-centered, if it's God-mandated, we don't have the right to touch that. We're kind of that Naboth type, where we are able to stand and say, we'd rather die than sell. That's what Naboth was. He said something like this: it's not mine, so how do I sell what doesn't belong to me? Well, we can give you something equivalent or better, but this isn't mine. I don't have the right to sell this. That's Naboth died because he understood, I don't have the right to mess around with what doesn't belong to me. And that's the way we feel. This is us, but we didn't conjure this up. There are things that fall away from the church today that have been expressions of how we operate in terms of, what is done from year to year. But it's not the core of who we are. The core of who we are, we can't change that. We can be better of who we are, but we can't change, because that's God. So if you want to try to change us, you're probably going to get burnt up and not feel comfortable, and that's what's happened in the past, and we don't celebrate that. This is not an expression of saying, my God, they weren't worthy. This is an expression of saying we can't violate who we are. Does that make sense? So, we're not going to. It matters how great the message is, but change only happens when it is heard and adopted. Vision is phenomenal. I love vision. But if you can't hear it and be a doer of the word, there's an issue that Jesus has with a hearer. And I had a discussion. I only have 5 minutes left, and I had a discussion with a pastor, and he said, I believe that person is teachable. And I said, fair enough. I said, but are they coachable? He said, I think it's the same thing. I said, you think so? Is it the same thing? Being teachable and coachable? Like, Chris, I can put you on the court. I can tell you everything I know about basketball. Okay? Everything I know. I played 4 years in a Christian league. I know a ton about basketball. But everything I do know about basketball, I could teach you. It's one thing for you to say, I got it, coach, I got it, I'm ready. And I put you in as a star point guard, okay? And I'm over there on the sidelines, and I can see what you can't, okay? I can see what you can't. And I say, Chris, number one, because I know how the defense is responding. One, Chris, one. I've taught you what one means. And here's how the operation is going to go. One. And Chris goes down to court, sees it, but is in his mind, we need to operate at 2. And so he calls out 2. And I'm screaming 1, but he's calling out 2. Now he's learned what 1 and 2 is. But he thinks 2 is better than 1 in this circumstance. Do you see what I'm saying? You could be teachable, but sometimes teachable and coachable are very different. We got to hear it and we've got to adopt to it. Like, but Lord, I think this is the better way to do it. I think if I do this, this is a better way to do it. And here's the issue. You ready? God will oftentimes take a step back and let number 2 flow to the surface. He's not going to get in the way and say, he's just going to step back and he's going to allow. He's going to allow my operation of calling out 2. He's going to allow that. And here's the kicker. Sometimes 2 is effective. But what we don't know is that there's an operation way in the future that number calling out 2 affected. And now I'm not in the complete will or I'm not in line with exactly what God wanted. You see what I'm saying? So the reason why we've got to be submitted to the message, I've got to hear it and I've got to adopt it and say, okay, it's the will of God at any cost. Noah had the best message, the most innovative product, the most dedicated employees, and the most sincere mission. Not a single person listened. We got the best message. Great. How does our message rise above the racket of the world? Because just because we got it doesn't, you see what I'm saying? Like, if no one's listening, if no one's paying attention, if no one's out there, we've got to make sure that we're doing the best that we can in terms of being the hands and feet of the Almighty God. So just to say we got the best message, the most innovative product, the most dedicated employees, most sincere mission, if no one out there is listening, here you go. We receive about, and I got to hurry, about 6,000 or more messages a day. Think about that. I'm not talking about just text messages. I'm talking about there's signals and messages through social media influences that you're hearing. You have 6,000 interactions a day. That is affecting our ability to be able to process the information that God is trying. So how do you get your ears and your heart above the racket? I'm telling you right now, the very elect of God. That's what his word says. The very elect of God. There is going to be a falling away in this last hour of men and women that you say, I never saw that coming. The very elect. We've got to be mindful, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to be mindful. I'm not going to go through this. So good. I just can't tell it all. The church today has adopted intentional expressions that serve as a visible reminder. Here's the 2 things of its commitment to its personality. The first one is the will of God at any cost. The will of God at any cost. You haven't seen our front walking in? It's right there. That comes from Luke 22:42. Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. The will of God at any cost is an expression of our personality. To be able to say, Jesus, you have every right to do exactly what you want. You ought to say that in your marriage. You ought to say that on your job. There ought to be no job out there, you hear me, that has the ability to be able to take you away from what God's will is. No ministry out there, no partner out there that is willing or that is able to take you away from the will of God. It has to be God's will at any cost. Everybody hear me? It's God's will at any cost, okay? Matthew 6:10, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The will of God at any cost. The second expression that I wanted to remind you of is, hey, you matter. This is it. Matthew 22:39, this is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The will of God at any cost, and hey, you matter. The two reminders of the expressions of our personality. Ladies and gentlemen, may we never forget who we are. Why do we do what we do? Why do we respond the way that we respond? Because it has to be the will of God at any cost. And it has to be loving our neighbor as ourself. I realize that we have to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But the second is as unto the first, to love our neighbor as ourself. Jesus Christ was walking, it's a representation, he is walking into Jerusalem this very day. It is a triumphant entry into Jerusalem. But what he's doing is he's looking all the way 8 days later to the resurrection, okay? 8 days later, he is out of that tomb. And before he gets out of the tomb, he's got to go through Calvary. He's looking at Calvary. And it is on Calvary that he's able to say, ready? He's able to say, not my will, but thine be done. That is a part of the Calvary expression. What he's saying is the will of God at any cost. And as he is hanging there, he is able to say, Father, forgive them. Forgive them. They don't even understand exactly what's going on. I don't want to hold this against them. And he's saying, I'm going to love my neighbor as I love myself. Hanging on Calvary are two expressions, the will of God at any cost, and hey, you matter. He's telling every single one that will ever be born and ever exist from that day on that you matter. You mattered enough that I came, that I gave my life, that I wrestled down in the underworld. It wasn't a wrestling match, but you get the expression. And then I rose again. And when I rose, I rose so that you can. I rose from the grave so that you do not have to live bound to this earth. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, he expressed the will of God at any cost better than any man. And hey, you matter better than any man. Why don't you stand, greet somebody in the name of the Lord. Praise God. We'll transition in Jesus' name.